Welcome to a very special episode of Varsity Club 602. We are actually layered over the top of the Armchair GM 2022 series, trying to help the guys at LDG Sports out a little bit. We will be GMing the Chicago Bears today. I have my good friend Kate here, who's the biggest Bears fan I know, to talk through some of this. Say hi, Kate.
Hey.
Kate, what qualifies you to be the Bears GM?
Been a Bears fan my whole life, all through all the bad, which has pretty much been mostly bad. So that's probably it.
Well, you have to have a little self-hating fan in you in order to make good business decisions about the team. I think that's what's missing from the current ownership.
Right.
So we'll break it down for you guys here. We're going to move through the entire Bears 2022 offseason. The concept of this series is we will be acting as the GM, Kate and I. We were going to give you a pick for GM, but we'll glaze over that pretty quickly as the Bears just last night signed Ryan Poles to a deal, and he's already getting to work. So we'll glaze over that, but then we'll get into the coaching search and a bit of this roster, and we'll go from there. Cap for 2022 in the NFL should be right around $210 million. The Bears only have 32 players under contract for 2022, so there is a lot of flexibility with this team. They should have $43-ish million available for the cap. As I said, they needed a new GM and a new head coach, so really a blank slate. You could go just about anywhere you want with this team.
I feel like there's nowhere to go but up for us.
Somehow not the worst team in their division. So to have a rebuild of this scale is really something. So as I alluded to, we know the GM. GM is Ryan Poles out of Kansas City. He does have scouting experience, which is really what this team needed more than anything, Kate. Someone who can look at a player and properly give a guess at what they might be 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Right.
Definitely something that seemed to be missing with the last group. I don't know how many first-round quarterbacks you have to trade up for and have fail before you realize you have a scouting issue.
Well,
Poles wouldn't have been my choice. A good choice, I'll say. I would have gone JoJo Wooden, Bill Polian guy. I mean, having Bill Polian as the face of your GM and coach search is a questionable thing to begin with. Bill Polian's an idiot, but the Bears are a very old school organization. Now Wooden brought a lot of what Poles is bringing to the table. They both have helped not so great teams get to a place of dominance. Wooden part of those Jets playoff teams way back when the Jets were actually decent. But that's neither here nor there. Poles is the guy, and he is already interviewing coaches. So, Kate, do you have a head coach that really stands out to you that you'd like to stick on this team as a GM?
it's funny. I kind of have like the pipe dream. I feel like most people do. And I feel like the closer we get, the more unrealistic it is. But I'd really love Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I know that it's, he's gone to Michigan. He's doing his thing. But I just feel like he had so much proof with young quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, I think, or not Patrick Mahomes. Oh no, what's his name? Can't play football anymore. NFL hates him.
You're talking about Kaepernick.
Kaepernick, thank you. Matt Kaepernick. I mean, he had like his rookie season was wild. Like, I mean, and I think that comes like you have to have a natural ability, but I think all the people that are getting drafted drafted as quarterbacks in the league have natural ability, right? They're stars in their wherever they were, so they need to be coached up. And I feel like we just for some reason don't ever seem to have coaches that can coach quarterbacks. And I think Jim Harbaugh would be a great way to. I'd love to see what he could do with Fields, I guess, is kind of the more of that. But I like, and I always say the last name wrong, but Brian DeBall, is that it? Gable?
Gable.
Gabol?
Yes.
Gable?
Gable.
Gable? I always say it wrong because I really whatever. Anyways, I really like Brian. I think he with the Bills offense this year. I mean, whatever. RIP to their season, but Josh Allen again. I think was a decent rookie quarterback, and what the offense has been able to do with that offense. Again, I just think we need to focus on offense. I'm a very offensive focused right now.
And really, that's what the Bears need is an offensive focus. I will say, Kate, you got to be nice. These LDG guys are all from Buffalo, so you can't disparage the Bills too much. I actually hadn't thought of Harbaugh in the role of QB developer. I don't disagree with you. The Mahomes hater in me loves that you mixed up Mahomes and Kaepernick. I'll be laughing about that one for a while here. I think it would work, especially in a situation like this where you have so many young players and you need to be rebuilding. Harbaugh really seems to have connected with the kids at Michigan. They're buying into it. They believe in it. The NFL's nothing like college, except where you're bringing those young players in. I think that some of what he has could work there, and we have seen him be successful in the NFL. I wouldn't leave Michigan if I was Harbaugh, but that's neither here nor there.
Right. I think that's the feeling that you get when people talk about it. You can see he's kind of like,
You'd have to back up the Brinks truck. You'd have to pay me everything. As far as who the Bears are actually looking at, the front runners right now are Dan Quinn, Eberflus, and Jim Caldwell. I'm just going to...
Right, I love Caldwell. The only real feeling I have is please not Caldwell.
I don't understand how a guy that's been out of coaching for 2 years... He had some health stuff, so I guess it's not all his choice, but if somebody wants you bad enough, they'll pay you enough where you're going to be there. He had 2 good years with Peyton Manning and then sucked without him, which I think a lot of coaches would have done. That team wasn't set up to not have Peyton Manning at quarterback. But then he was just awful. He took over a Detroit team that went to the playoffs, but I think it was Reggie Bush and Kelvin Johnson Stafford's best year. I mean, it's not exactly inspiring hope.
Right.
The other one I want to throw out is Dan Quinn, because as we were just talking about, the Bears need an offensive-minded coach. The offense needs work. Fields needs help. And I just don't think Dan Quinn fits that mold. I'm not sure where they're going to go here. Jim Caldwell feels like he's going to be the next coach of the Bears.
I know. And I don't know why I keep getting that feeling. Like every time there's like, oh no, we've got all these people, but then like the conversation seems to always lead to Caldwell. I'm not really sure I understand why.
Yeah, he seems to be high on a lot of people's list. My pick for coach.
This is really no. Has Brian Poles said that?
Well, he has not. But he hasn't said a whole lot because he's only been in the job for like 12 hours.
Right.
My pick for head coach is still Byron Leftwich, who seems like an impossibility at this point. He's got NFL experience. He's played the game. His recent track record with all kinds of wily veterans says that he can do it. You can definitely look at Tom Brady and say, hey, this is the reason the Bucs are good, and you wouldn't be wrong. Tom Brady has nothing but good things to say about Leftwich. And now I will take my first shot at Fields. I'm going to try to minimize it, okay? I'm going to try to not take a whole bunch of shots. My Bears fans have been pretty beaten up.
Ready. I'm ready.
But here's the first one. Leftwich already has experience working with a guy that's not good enough to be an NFL quarterback in Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask out of Florida, I don't think has what it takes. He's being groomed to be first the backup and then the successor to Brady. I think he can come in here with a guy who's been questioned a lot and get with Fields and give Fields some of that confidence and some of that direct, you're not the guy yet coaching that I think could push his game to the next level. The other thing I like about Leftwich is because he's been in the league for so long, both as a player and a coach, he has touched so many different coaching trees, and the assistant coaches that he would bring on are going to be guys that know their shit. They're going to be guys that can put together an offensive game plan, a defensive game plan, and really teach both vets and new kids how to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think that I'm just coming for Justin Fields always. We're gonna cheer for him, but like I don't think he was really given a shot. Like I think that this year it was like if he wasn't being sacked, like he like was trying to run and he was, I feel like every time they kind of were trying to show promise, he did. But they couldn't execute with the offense that they had, and he was not being coached correctly. I mean, again, you have the Tom Brady's, what was he drafted? Like, I can't even remember, like 29. I mean, it was like so far back when Tom Brady was drafted.
2001? Yeah.
Right. He was not even anyone's first pick. There was so many people, and I'm not saying that Tom Brady's not a star and that he wasn't a star way back when in college or whatever, but I think with proper coaching, a good, decent, like good quarterback can become excellent. And I think Justin Fields has those qualities. He really needs a coach who believes in him and knows how to coach young quarterbacks. And I think that's I think that was kind of the fail on this last year. I mean, and the argument can go so many ways with everyone. Like you look at Aaron Rodgers, which arguably the most overrated quarterback of all time, but I truly believe, like, would he be even where he is if he wasn't under Brett Favre for all those years? I mean, I think learning as a young quarterback to be coached to be a great quarterback is definitely a skill, and I think it's needed. And I just don't think, like, we've ever even, poor Mitch Trubisky, but I don't think he could have been a great quarterback. I don't think he got the opportunity in Chicago. I mean, Stafford's another great example of when you don't have support around you, terrible. When you do, bam, like, look at, he's freaking killing it this year.
So I will say, just to wrap up a couple of your points, Tom Brady's 6th round pick went 20-5 at Michigan.
6th round.
Aaron Rodgers, since 2017, has the same number of playoff wins as Blake Bortles. Those are two of my favorite stats from this week. But you make a lot of good points there. And
yeah, I saw one that was like, can you imagine having a top-rated quarterback for like 25 years and only having 2 Super Bowls to show for it? And it was like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. I was like, that's really great.
See, so Bears fans, here's your balance. I will make fun of Fields and Kate will make fun of the Packers, and we'll balance out just like we do it back at home. You brought up a lot of good points about the offense that Fields was working with. So why don't we talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this 2021 team? Were there any strengths, Kate?
Again, I feel like there was hope, specifically with the offense. I mean, Allen Robinson, I feel like, which I know he's up for renew this year or whatever. But I feel like him and Fields, right? There's so much about chemistry with the quarterback and a receiver. And I feel like Allen was proving that he's that guy that can get the ball, like, when you need it, those big time plays. But yeah, I mean, we had some veterans that never really panned out, like Jimmy Graham. I feel like he's great, but like, what did he do this year? Like, we had so much, like, what did they end up doing this year?
We'll say there's a fine line between veteran and old, and I think Jimmy Graham is. I
guess that's true.
I will say the running backs.
True.
The running backs, while Montgomery was hurt and Cohen missed the whole year, running back was still solid. Khalil Herbert is the future. So if Montgomery came back, he looked great. Now, Herbert looked like a rookie, but definitely looked like he can be the guy to carry the ball 300 times in the season if they needed him to be. So I actually have the running back core as a strength, despite the fact that it was kind of a rough year for them on the whole.
Well, I think that's the going back to hiring polls, right? Is that our line, like, we need to figure out how to hire offensive linemen. And obviously that's where polls release strength came in, hopefully. But like we weren't able to do anything. Like we had against the Vikings, we had 5 times we were in the red zone and couldn't score a freaking touchdown. Like it's wild to me. Like like, okay, maybe 1 out of 5, like we literally couldn't score. Like we couldn't figure out how to score. So obviously the O-line is a problem.
And this is why I wanted Kate on the show. I have all my stats in front of me. I have endless amounts of notes. What I don't have is that pain, just that hurt.
True. It's so frustrating watching.
Red zone efficiency is one of the things I have up on my screen right now. But the numbers can't speak for like just how painful watching the Vikings game was for you.
Yeah, really. And like literally sitting there where you feel like, I feel like this is where the Bears do me wrong every year, is you have so much hope. And like, it's like, okay, wow, we're in the red zone again. Wow, we're in the red zone again. Wow, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. And every time being just like punched in the face. Like, yeah.
So really high level, I had the running backs and the linebackers as solid groups in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
The wide receivers, the quarterbacks, the defensive backs, and specifically the offensive line were glaring weaknesses.
Yeah. See, and I think it starts with the offensive line. I guess that's why I'm so frustrated or focused on, like, the one reason that from the things I've seen about polls that I'm optimistic about is hopefully they can figure out the offensive line, because you can't, and I know Justin Fields, whatever, but if he is being sacked every time, I mean, it's hard to win football games. I mean, it's hard to even run an offense when your quarterback is going to or every single person, like, you have 5 people on the line because you hold back 3 guys. Like, you can't, it's hard to win a freaking quarterback, or it's hard to win a football game.
So the one thing I will say is a little bit of a preview is that the free agent class for offensive line is horrific. There's no one to sign at offensive line that is a surefire upgrade to anything that the Bears already have. So we'll get into that in just a little bit here. Key departures for the Bears, at least from my standpoint, I tried to pick the players that didn't suck, because losing a high-value guy who played like crap doesn't really matter in my eyes. So for me, key departures, I only had 4. Allen Robinson, Akeem Hicks, Bilal Nichols, and Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I mean...
And it hurt me to put Andy Dalton on that list, but...
Why? How many times can we hire old quarterbacks and hope that they'll, like... I don't know what.
I don't know what the former GM before we were hired, I don't know what they were thinking. You've got Big Dick Nick. Super Bowl MVP.
We love Big Dick.
Not necessarily a great quarterback, but like, what did you see in Dalton's tape that's like, oh, he's going to be the guy, not Nick?
Well, weren't they mostly worried about not having anyone when they picked up Dalton? Because they went on, wasn't it last season? They went all in on Seattle on Russell Wilson, and he turned him down.
Well,
right? So then it was like, by the time when he turned him down, it was like, oh shit, we need someone. Was that not the scenario that the Bears found themselves
I've always been of the opinion that you can start a rookie quarterback for 17 games now, and like whatever happens, happens. Like, I don't know what the hope was to gain, but like Nick Foles was already under contract. I don't see, unless they saw something in Andy Dalton's game that they thought could directly influence the way Fields is playing football in the NFL. But I haven't seen any stories or quotes to that effect. So I put Andy Dalton on here as a key departure because he's kind of the starting quarterback. So losing him is at least something you have to address in some way. But not a huge loss.
I'm not. I mean, Hicks, I feel like does a good job, but I mean, though I think Allen Robinson, I don't know. I feel like him and him and Justin Fields really did start to have some chemistry, and I feel like getting Fields to a point where he's comfortable is really important. And so I'm not sure. I mean, I don't actually know the stat of who was his number one wide receiver.
I will let you wax poetic on Allen Robinson for a couple seconds, and I'll find it for you.
Yeah. Because I feel like Allen Robinson just has like he did what he was supposed to. Again, when there's no, I don't know. I'm not totally sure that we should just get rid of him.
Allen Robinson had
I feel like he did
38 catches in 11 games. It looks like every quarterback that threw a pass for the Bears, Mooney was the top receiver. Yeah, Robinson missed a ton of time this year.
He did. Right. I don't know.
So one thing I wanted to call out, because I don't want to give it any time when we do positional stuff later. Both the long snapper and the punter, Scales and O'Donnell, have their contracts expiring this season. There's no reason to bring any of them back. Sign some undrafted kids for the minimum. See what happens. See if they stick. You can always get these guys back again later. No one's signing O'Donnell. O'Donnell's been a barely top 20 punter for his entire time in the NFL. You can get a kid out of college undrafted and pay him the minimum and free up about $1 million of cap space by not keeping these two. If you're a special teams purist, I love punters. O'Donnell's a bad punter.
Special teams are your favorite.
I love special teams.
Games are one.
But I didn't want to get bogged down in the conversation about which punter we were going to sign. So I'm saying we'll just bring some kids into camp that don't get drafted, and whoever kicks it 60 yards, just sign him, because O'Donnell's below replacement level as a punter, and there's no point in holding on to him.
Yep.
So, for the draft, the Bears have 5 picks in the 2022 draft. The draft capital for the Bears has been in really bad shape for half a decade now, as they have navigated trading up at times where they probably didn't have to trade up. But that's neither here nor there.
No, for sure didn't.
They
for sure did not have to
for
trade
sure
up.
Didn't have to trade up for Trubisky. That was the most tone-deaf trade in the history of the world. You can make an argument that the Vikings might have taken Fields, but if they take Fields, you just don't take a quarterback in the first round, and you're in the same boat you are today. So 2022, they have a second, a third, 2 fifths, and a sixth. So not anything going on day one there. But on day 2, Kate, the Bears are going to get a chance to make a couple selections here. So I have some thoughts on where we should go, but I'm curious to hear where you think we should go with the second pick. Second round pick, sorry, not the second pick.
I was like, no, don't think that's us. Because we can't even lose properly to get better draft picks. God, I honestly, I would be interested to hear what you think, because I don't really know. I truly to my core am so, it's just offense. I mean, we have to score more points. It's the only thing I can think of, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know the right people to draft to get there. Linemen, but you said there's
no linemen in the free agent class. But that's actually where I'm going to go with the first 2 picks, the second round pick and the third pick. I think they have to be offensive linemen, and they have to be offensive linemen who can start right now. Because what we saw in the regular season is that all of the depth is terrible. That big kid, Tevin Jenkins, who can't block so bad he gets mad and hits guys. We need some kids who can play football and can play football right now. My pick in a perfect world would be Darian Kinnard out of Kentucky. Boy is big. Yeah. He's like 6'7", 365. First team All
Oh,
SEC
gosh.
2 years in a row. He can play in the NFL right now. And the nice thing is that because the whole offensive line is really kind of weak, we can draft guys and plug them in where the line all fits together. We'll get into the rest of the offensive line a little bit later. But at least with the second and the third round picks, I'd love to grab an offensive lineman who's ready to go. Sean Ryan from UCLA, Zion Johnson out of BC, Jeremy Jamari Salyer, there it is, big old kid out of Georgia off that national championship team. All big guys, body movers, can run block and pass block. They should be there. Kennard might fall into the back of the first round, but I'm hoping he sticks around for this Bears team. And then in the third round, I'd do the same thing. I'd go with another offensive line, somebody a little bit quicker, but still looking for that size. Montgomery sees the holes really well, runs really well. And then Cohen is just so damn fast. So I think that the big bodies who can
Right.
hold the damn line are where we should kind of focus. The other guys on my list here were Kellen Diesch out of ASU, Rasheed Walker from Penn State, and Tyler Smith from Tulsa. And they're big boys. Less flexible in the third round than the second round. The talent really starts to drop off. But hey, with a guy like
Right.
Poles in there who has done extensive college scouting, hopefully he can see something in the guys in this range and say, look, this is what we need and this is what we can do. But for me, as GM, as we sit here right now, it's big offensive linemen, and it's got to be guys who are NFL ready.
Right.
So I could see
Yeah, for sure. Because we need people now. Like, we can't go out with the same. Like, offensive line was, I think, in my mind, the biggest. Like that, the whole thing. I would be fine if every draft pick we took was just an offensive lineman at this
might
point.
still not be enough. There's some intriguing running backs in the second and third round, but it's really not a need. Like I said, I think they're pretty much set. Herbert is the guy going forward. He's a second-year guy. That's essentially your draft pick, right? He didn't get a whole bunch of time with a really bad offense this year. He's essentially your draft pick again this year. That's your running back. There's some quarterbacks that are somewhat intriguing, but it's not going to happen. I wouldn't do it if I was the GM.
I'm sure they're going to pick fields a little bit.
I don't see a scenario where it happens with who they have in place now, and honestly, sitting as the imaginary GM for this show, you can't. You literally can't. There are so many other needs on this team that Fields is the guy whether you want him to be or not. So might as well put the pieces around him so you can stay upright for more than 3 seconds at a time. Moving into the fifth round, got to get a wide receiver. I'll give you a little look ahead. I have no intention of bringing back Allen Robinson for what his price tag will be.
Well, that's the key, right? I don't know what is his price tag, but I'm assuming, I don't know. I'm still not torn that he has to go. I guess I just don't know that there's anyone that's that much better that's worth putting your money at.
Well, absolutely.
But we need people.
Yeah, you need bodies. And that's why there's two of us, Kate, because I just can't sit here and trash on Allen Robinson and get away with it. So we will definitely discuss more Allen Robinson. But I think even if you keep him, wide receiver is tragically thin. Mooney is the only wide receiver under contract after this year. So regardless of who you re-sign, you probably need a new one. I slated that earlier pick in the fifth round for wide receiver. Guy like Kirby Joseph out of Illinois, Ronnie Bell out of Michigan, or Trey Turner out of Virginia Tech. Guys with some reach, guys with some speed. not always the tallest player on the field, but guys with wingspans that can, how do I want to put this politely, that can make up for some errant throws. You want that big catch radius like Calvin Johnson had. Realistically, not a slot guy, because there's some slot guys available. So I want somebody who can run good routes, good hands. Because the defensive backs in the NFC North are pretty good. No, they're not Eli Apple good. Have you seen any of that nonsense?
No, I've not. But I can only imagine.
You should look it up afterwards. I won't derail the show with it, but Eli Apple's on a different level. So that leaves us with another fifth-round pick and a sixth-round pick. And for me, Kate, it's defensive backs. Because while I just said the defensive backs are good in the NFC North, I meant playing against the Bears. Because the Bears' defensive backs are awful. Really top to bottom, because we got to see all the practice squad guys because of the COVID outbreak. And the practice squad guys are awful. So we really need some high-impact defensive backs who don't necessarily have to play right away, but if there's a single injury and they're asked to play nickel, they have to be able to play nickel in the NFL. Like, they have to be able to not fall or run into each other against really bad wide receivers.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I still think, again, in a league where, you've got the Tampa Bays and the Green Bays and the Chargers that are putting up 30 points a game, right, essentially. And you've got the Bears that I don't even think we were getting 20. I mean, that just is such a blare. And you look at the teams currently right now that are going, or that are, for this year specifically, that are in the playoffs, that made the playoff, their defenses are kind of all over the board. Like, they weren't necessarily the best defenses. They were good defenses, whatever, but all of them were the best offenses. So I'm still on this, we have to focus so hard on offense, because if we can put up the points, then the defense comes, and we've always been a really strong defensive team. I just don't know that. I feel like with all of our draft picks right now, our offense needs so much help. I just don't want to waste any picks on, I don't know. I feel like you can get good players not during the draft, and I think our entire draft should be offense. Again, even multiple, our second round, our third round, and our 2 fifth round, I'm fine with all of that being offensive linemen, and maybe a wide receiver if you don't want to keep Allen Robinson. But honestly, yeah.
I will say that there are some really, really good defensive backs available in free agency this year. They are all on massive contracts, and they are all 30 years old or older.
So they're all going to cost him get hurt.
Yeah, eyes blind to anything but recent field performance.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Peterson's available. He's going to be 32 this year, and he's making $8 million a year for the Vikings. Joe Hayden's available. He's going to be 33, and he's making 11.5. So they're there. You can sign them. And to your point, if you're signing offensive players, there frees up more cash. Right. But just the availability of those defensive backs is why I went a different direction than you with those defensive backs.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot left from an impact standpoint in the 5th and 6th rounds. So I can absolutely see an argument for offensive linemen or for skill players in those late rounds, and just take a shot on guys because it starts getting thin. I will say what I looked at was for big guys closer to 6 foot, around 215, 220. who can run with not only wide receivers but tight ends. And the list I came back with was pretty damn short. Trey Sterling out of Oklahoma State, Elijah Hicks out of Cal, Greg Elworth out of Iowa State, which I think is a really interesting one, and I'd actually prefer the Saints to draft. But I have to name my favorite because this kid out of Auburn, he has an NFL name. He's about He's about 215. He's like 5'11". Smoke Monday. His name is...
That's not his legal name.
I would be willing to bet it is. But even if it's not, Smoke Monday, he's going to have his first Monday Night Football game, and they're going to do the little pop-up. He's going to say his name. He's going to go, Smoke Monday, Auburn. And he's going to have like 3 interceptions on Monday Night Football. It might not be for the Bears, but a big impact defensive back like that, a guy who can play the nickel but could also transition to corner or safety, depending on what their natural position is now. I think it goes somewhere. I can't argue against taking offensive linemen or offensive players, especially in the 5th and 6th round, because everyone's a lottery card, right, at that round. You know, for every Tom Brady, there's 200 guys that don't make a team. So,
right.
So that's kind of the draft. We've alluded to free agency a few times. So I guess let's do that now. I'm going to insert my Fields hate portion of the video right now. So for those of you watching on the Club 602 YouTube, you'll get to see a couple slides about Fields that Kate hasn't seen, and she doesn't have the slideshow. And if you're listening on the radio, we will try to keep it as light on the Fields hate as possible, so we can move on with this. But Kate, what you're not seeing right now is a sad clip art picture I found of a sad bear inside a tornado. And really, I think that just encapsulates the entire season for the Bears this year. But I say that to say this. We are going to operate under the assumption that Fields is the guy. There's little reason to take him out now. He has to be the quarterback from every functional standpoint. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Even in our fantasy land where we're the GMs, Fields is the quarterback. I will say that pretty much every advanced metric that exists, up to and including the all-powerful eye test, says that Fields is not the guy. However, from probably the only thing that actually matters, right, which is an NFL money standpoint, he's the guy. One other thing I got to call up on the screen before we'll stop being boring for radio, and Kate, I'll send you this afterwards, but it just kind of captured for me Bears fans, because it's a Venn diagram. And says how Chicago hopes Justin Fields' career will go. So the 2 circles are the Bears' history of bad quarterbacks and Ohio State's history of bad quarterbacks in the NFL. And they overlap, right? So when the 2 circles for a Venn diagram overlap, it means they're both true, right? Am I remembering school correctly? So the Bears fan who made this graphic has an arrow pointing to the overlap. It says the rare exception, meaning that Fields is not only a bad Bears quarterback, but a bad Ohio State quarterback. They meant to put the arrow to outside the circles, but the arrow points to the middle. And that, for me, just really captured a whole lot of this.
That makes me sad, because I still believe Fields.
One of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time, but his EPA and his completion percentage above expectation are horrific. He's essentially Kyle Bowler. So I'll let that sink. But hey, the Fields hate comes to an end right here. I will not disparage Fields again unless it's hidden in my notes somewhere. We might film a larger breakdown of Justin Fields. It'll be in the YouTube comments if we do. But hey, for everybody hanging out for the Armchair GM series for LDG Sports and Entertainment, the Fields hate will come to an end, and the GMs will move on. Having said all that, Dalton's gone. There's no reason to bring Dalton back. Nick Foles is still on this roster. Nick Foles is still Nick Foles. For that reason and that reason alone, we really need to sign another quarterback. The Bears have a long history of having 3 quarterbacks on a roster because weird shit happens to this team. Weird shit happens in Chicago where they call for a kid's head after he plays 3 games. So there has to be another quarterback. There's a lot of options out there, a lot of veteran quarterbacks you can take. My pick ties into my head coach pick, and it's Blaine Gabbert. Is Blaine Gabbert coming up from Tampa? Blaine Gabbert has been in a lot of systems. Blaine Gabbert knows about being a highly touted college quarterback who didn't really pan out in the NFL. And in the fantasy world we've created where we actually signed the head coach I wanted, Blaine Gabbert knows the offense. So for those reasons, he fits really well with Fields, who's still a very young, very talented quarterback who needs to be refined into something NFL worthy. Is there any old quarterback that springs to mind for you, Kate, that you might want to sign to this team, or are you just going to roll with Foles and Fields?
Honestly, I would like to roll with Foles and Fields. Because I think Foles, where he's not necessarily the best quarterback, I think he has a lot of knowledge, and I think he was interesting watching him on the sideline with Fields this year, and the coaching, right, and the also helping as a teammate. That I don't necessarily know why do we need 3 of the same position when all of our offense needs to be replaced. I just, I don't want to spend so much money on a quarterback.
Very fair.
When we have quarterbacks. But I'm not mad at Gabbert, what you're saying. I mean, I'm not mad at that idea. I guess having someone who's there, kind of in the background if our offense can't hold him and we keep breaking ribs and stuff.
So from a strictly GM standpoint, right, it's the difference between an open roster spot and about $2 million of cap. You're really not going to get any of the guys that are available for less. You might get somebody at the veteran minimum, but it's going to be like Chase Daniel, and then there's no point in doing it anyway. So
I would clearly rather no one. Personally, just take the 2.
And you shouldn't need one. There's the kid they just signed to the practice squad, to a futures deal. Mm-hmm. He'll end up on the practice squad, and that's totally fine. Because like you said, you shouldn't need a third quarterback. Yeah. So I definitely wouldn't fight you on that one. I do want to raise a very interesting possibility. It's not It's not anywhere near a probability, but a possibility. Mitchell Trubisky's a free agent.
In our world. No.
Mitchell Trubisky's a free agent. You could bring good old Mitch back, and Mitch could.
I believed in Mitch for so long.
He could back up Fields.
I really wanted Mitch to be our guy.
I think if you brought in Mitch to back up Fields, you have to cut Nick Foles, because boy might just quit anyway.
Can you imagine? There's no way they would light the stadium on fire, I think. Amazing. In Chicago at this point.
Well, that might expedite the trip out to Arlington Heights when we get that new stadium built. Sorry,
right, exactly.
That's for our Bears fantasy owner show that we'll film later, where we replace the McCaskies and do smart shit. All right, so moving on to running back. As we talked about earlier, running back real solid. Montgomery's the guy. Cohen's the change of pace back, and a damn good one. Good wide receiver and a good pass blocker, which they were really missing this year. Khalil Herbert's the future.
Yeah, I like Herbert.
I don't know in the 5th or 6th round, which would really be the first, if we were dead set on taking a running back, there's not a whole lot available on the back end. You can take those offensive linemen or wide receiver flyers we were talking about. That's probably a better value than a running back at that point. We have carried another running back. We have needed another running back. So really, I think signing a guy who's kind of a jack of all trades type, who can play special team snaps, pretty much what Damian Williams has done the last 2 years for this team. I think that's probably something we'd have to do, but we're looking for a middle career kind of underperforming guy who we can get for the veteran minimum. The names that came to mind for me were Marlon Mack, Matt Breida, Royce Freeman. Breida has looked really good at times for the Niners, up to the point where at one point he was the guy. It didn't last very long, but he can do everything. He can play special teams. So if we can get him for the new minimum for players of his age is $1.035 million. And I think out of the 43 that's available, that's a safe spend. And then running back set. You got 4 guys, and you don't have to touch it again.
Right.
There are some higher price guys available if you're interested, Kate, but I don't see the need.
I'm not. I want to spend the money where we really need it. I'm with you.
Selfishly, as a Wisconsin guy, James White and Melvin Gordon, both free agents, would love to get them in the same backfield again. That might be a conversation. If we end up doing a Saints GM show, that might be a conversation for my disaster of a team, not this one. So, you want to do wide receivers or tight ends next? Wide receivers is a piece of conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've definitely, man, I told you, I feel just so lost as to we need all new everything.
All right, so let's do wide receivers.
But yeah, let's do tight end. I like a good tight end.
Okay, all right, yeah, tight end. So Cole Kmet under contract. All the other old ass guys are gone. Jimmy Graham is gone. The sweet release of career death for Jimmy Graham. You don't need another pass catching tight end. Kmet does that well enough. I guess you could dive in and get one of these bigger named guys, but I think really what they need is a 6th offensive lineman. You need a big blocking tight end.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that's, I mean, you look at this this year, again, like kind of going back to some of the teams that have found success, which is what I'm basing kind of what I feel like the Bears like do so wrong is like, what are the teams doing so right? Like that's not what I think, but like, why can't we do that? One of the things is I think the tight end position this year has proven to be so key, and some really big teams that have found really good success are those big tight ends that, but like, yeah, massive guys that definitely block, but also are, almost going out and catching. Like you need, I definitely think, there's a few that come to mind that had such good years or were having good years or are having good years that definitely are not available. But, like, I definitely agree with you in that we need just kind of big tight end. Like,
so Kmet had a 18% reception share, and I'm picking that number specifically instead of the target share because the dude drops a lot of balls. But the point is that Kmet was targeted a ton in this offense. Jimmy Graham and Jesse James combined had 31 targets. Kmet had 93. So I say all that to say this. If Tom Brady retires, Rob Gronkowski is a free agent. So all jokes aside, the tight ends available are old not good at blocking, or only good at blocking. So the guy I have written down here is Derek Carrier out of Las Vegas. And Carrier, I think, has like 6 catches total in the last 5 seasons. All he does is block. All he does is block. He is another lineman. But he's a lineman that comes... So I will give you some pass-catching tight ends and then an interesting tight end in case you did want to go the tight end as a wide receiver kind of route. Mo Alley Cox out of Indianapolis has shown he can block and catch balls. He's a little small, if memory serves correctly. So definitely is a tight end who can block versus a 6th offensive lineman. But is young-ish and an interesting price point. Eric Ebron, who most recently has been with the Steelers, but was in Detroit. You might remember him from his time with the Lions. Kind of the same deal, much more of a receiving tight end. And then there's just not a whole lot else out here. Guys like David Njoku are kind of interesting. Ricky Seals-Jones with the Redskins is kind of interesting. But one name that might really jump off the page to you, Kate, and quite honestly is a guy who can do both. It's Robert Tanyan. Robert Tanyan from our school.
Yeah, heck yeah. Actually, he said that too in his little like entry whatever in the games, and I was like, he went to college. Why didn't he say that? But
I'll tell you what,
it.
I just looked over at the video recording, and we had been locked into the wrong recording for God knows how long.
That's good.
Good news, audio is going to be perfect. Video is going to have X minutes that just doesn't line up. But hey. Yeah, Robert Tanyan coming home, maybe play for the Bears. Probably grew up a Bears fan.
I would love that because I hate cheering for him in the Packers. And I don't cheer for him because I'm mad that he's on the Packers. But you can't not, our homeboy.
Oh man. So that's
yeah. But he's not leaving Green Bay.
He is an unrestricted free agent after this year.
Okay.
We would probably have to pay Tanyan like $8 million.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely. I mean, he did get hurt, but he was fired.
He made 3.384 this year, and I think had his best statistical season.
Yeah.
So
before he got hurt.
So we are definitely going to have to pay for that, and I don't think that's something I'm willing to do.
No. I mean, maybe he wants to play in Chicago, and we can get him for less. I mean, I think if the Packers, if Aaron stays, which, I mean, who could know, I think they're going to want him back. I think they're going to pay him.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about the Packers salary cap situation to say for sure. But let's just say...
But I would... That's like a real... we can throw it out there. I'm in. I'm kind of in.
So here's the question, and we'll use it to transition to the wide receivers. Would you sacrifice signing a mid-ish tier wide receiver to sign Tanyan as a tight end?
So I'm going to go with yes. Strictly kind of in that vein or realm of like if we can get more blockers, I think we need to be running the ball more with a rookie quarterback and having Justin Fields getting comfortable with a few throws and wide receivers and maybe, the occasional tight end or a helpful tight end, but more strength on that offensive line is where I'm at. So I would say yes. I would take a middle wide receiver and a strong tight end.
I don't think I have a strong argument. I think my preference would be toward either or, right? Because with a guy like Kmet, you already have a guy who kind of does both.
Yeah, but he didn't really do both well.
Well.
So maybe we can get him to focus on one.
I mean, Kmet was the number 2 wide receiver. Here's the interesting stat here. I'll give you this. Kmet was the number 2 wide receiver on this team. He was 200 yards better than Allen Robinson, and he played 5 more games.
Okay.
So it's what? That's 40 yards a game better?
Yeah.
Than Robinson, who
Right.
averaged about the same yards per catch, but together they were the worst wide receivers from a yards per reception standpoint.
So then arguably...
I'd be willing to bet that Tanyan's yards per catch was better.
And a medium.
Bears are 27th in total offense with 13 and a half points per game, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, not good.
If we want to talk about, again, how we just need offense.
Tanyan's about a yard and a half better per catch than Kmet. I'd want to check that up against like Rodgers versus Fields for depth of target, but at least on the surface, Tanyan's doing more with his receptions.
Right.
And definitely scored more.
Yeah. This is true, but everyone did.
All right, so let's look at wide receivers here. As we said, bad situation. Mooney is the only wide receiver under contract. The one upside here is that there are a ton of air quotes good and good wide receivers.
Love air quotes.
There are both. The huge name on this list. Well, hey, let's start at the top. The wide receiver making the most money this year, the most money, that is a free agent, is Allen Robinson. Made like $18 million this year. To be comparable to Cole Kmet. That's reason.
Man, when you break it down like that, it's so disappointing. Like, you're so disappointing.
So, I am not against bringing Allen Robinson back onto the team. I am against bringing Allen Robinson back onto the team for 18.5.
Yeah, I agree with you.
No, he had injury and a down year.
For those listening,
go ahead.
It does not happen often that me and Rick agree.
So that's really for me why I can't bring him back. It's not a not wanting. It's even with the statistical regression and the injury that we saw, I don't know if you can sign Allen Robinson for less than $15 million.
Right.
And for $15 million, there's other guys on this list I want.
Right.
So we'll loop back around because I know you're an Allen Robinson guy, but let's move further down this list because whether you keep him or not, you need more players. Another big game on this list, and I'm about to piss off some Tampa Bay fans. Chris Godwin, who I think is the most overrated wide receiver in the league. He runs good routes.
Okay.
He's a pretty good catcher. This dude has only ever played, and whatever your opinions are on these two quarterbacks I'm about to list, they sling it. They are not Justin Fields. Neither one of these guys from a passing standpoint is Justin Fields, and that's the point I'm trying to make. So you can sound off in the comments however much you want about what I'm about to say. Chris Godwin has only played with Jameis Winston and Tom Brady, who are two of the most prolific throwing quarterbacks ever. Sure, Winston throws a lot of picks. You know what else he throws? Winston throws touchdowns. And Godwin, I don't think is the kind of guy who can do well with a developing quarterback. I think the quarterback Fields is going to turn into will be the kind of guy that Godwin could play with. I don't think spending the $12 to $14 million this season is the right spot for him, especially with the other guys that are available.
Yeah.
One that really jumped off the page to me, Kate, was Juju Smith-Schuster. And I see you shaking your head there, and that's fair. Juju coming off a terrible year, but a year in which he was hurt, a year in which he had to play with a really old Ben Roethlisberger. I think you could probably have Juju for less than $8 million.
Okay.
He is very recently removed from a season in which he had 97 catches, 800 some yards. And what we know from looking over this Bears team is that there isn't a volume guy, especially if we let Robinson go.
Right.
You know, I mean, Mooney has looked good, but if we assume that we have to replace almost all these wide receivers, Mooney's not enough.
Right.
Juju isn't that old yet. Can play the slot, can play outside. I'm a little worried about him getting beat up by these big defensive backs in the division. But I mean, he plays for the Steelers. You know, he's played against good defensive teams before. It wouldn't be anything too new.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at it. I'm just, I guess it's this weird feeling of like, is that again just putting like a Band-Aid instead of fixing, like getting another older person? It's not, I don't know. I don't know how we start to build rather than just fix. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, and some of this, what we talked about earlier, grabbing a wide receiver. You know, one thing you had spoken to is maybe grabbing multiple wide receivers.
Right.
So if you figure, call it two.
Right.
Call it two wide receivers coming in, plus Mooney.
Right.
Is there anybody else that has an expiring contract that you want to keep? Now, Jakeem Grant mostly returned kicks. Marquise Goodwin showed some promise at times. You could probably have Goodwin for close to the minimum. He's not a highly sought after guy.
Right.
You know, Bird kind of came on toward the end of the year.
Didn't do anything.
You know, those three guys combined had 57 catches.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That feels right.
No, so
yeah.
For me, there's nobody coming back from this free agent list, including Robinson because of the cost. But Robinson, Grant, Goodwin, and Bird for me are all going to walk.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the, the price tag on Allen Robinson, obviously now.
So
Definitely, he was not worth that. I mean, at least in our offense this last year. So, yeah.
Isaiah Coulter is signed to a futures deal. So's, I'm going to butcher his name. Nasimba Webster?
I think that's right.
Neither of them make the team for me. Maybe practice squad guys.
Right.
I'd rather go a little bit further down this free agent list and grab a guy like Zay Jones out of Las Vegas. Really got a lot of time this year because his teammate decided to do 120 and a 35 and kill a lady. Allegedly. I think we say allegedly because I don't know if it's...
I was like, I don't think
he's been charged
actually...
for that. He's not necessarily guilty of it. But Zay's a phenomenal route runner and can move the chains. He's got that wingspan we talked about for catching balls that maybe aren't exactly on target. The other side...
You didn't give Joseph Field a chance. He didn't have time to throw accurately.
The other big thing about Zay for me is he's very consistent in his playing time, which isn't something we've seen from a Bears wide receiver since Brandon Marshall, who I think only missed time when his wife stabbed him.
I miss the Brandon Marshalls. I miss Brandon Marshall a lot. He was great.
Zay Jones, since entering the NFL, played in 15, 16, 15, 16, and 17 games.
I mean, that's consistent.
And I think we could get him for 4.5. Your one cap hit might be a game we play with some signing and roster bonuses. But I think year over year, you could probably get him for 4.5, which leaves us a lot of flexibility.
Right.
If we go Mooney, Juju, Zay Jones, and a rookie, I still think you need at least one more. So in your scenario, it would be another rookie in the 6th round, right? Another wide receiver. And I don't find myself disagreeing with that. However, there's another veteran out there who could probably be had for the minimum, who I kind of like if we're going to have all these younger wide receivers, and someone to keep Juju from being Juju. Mohamed Sanu, who had a decent year. He's very old.
Right.
But is still the kind of guy who can run all of those intermediate routes really, really well. If you didn't want to go that direction, undrafted free agents, and just looking at this mess of veterans that could be had for the minimum, you could get anybody you want, pay them nothing, and see who sticks.
Right.
If you wanted to look younger, high upside, but none of it really realized, Ray Mccloud from the Steelers is also a free agent this year. I don't know if I'd want Mccloud and Juju together, but a guy like that, Laquan Treadwell, Michael Gallup maybe. There's these guys who were highly touted who have shown flashes that haven't had it to this point.
Right.
And if you go, veterans minimum, just over $1 million, you could grab a couple of these guys and kind of just see what happens. And if Fields...
I think I'm leaning towards that again. Like, I feel like our current problem is we keep going for these key high price tag players, and then they pan out in some ways, but because we don't have any support anywhere else, it doesn't make a difference, right? Like we paid hand over foot for Mac, which was amazing. And what did he do for our defense? I mean, incredible things. But we don't have a freaking offense that can score. Like you can't, like we can't keep doing this like big money ticket people with no return. Like we need, I would rather go older wide receivers that have more experience just to kind of Fields to learn, get our running game going. I still want to stick to that. I like the idea of having another big tight end. I think the best teams out there right now have really big, good tight ends. And I think that's one of the things that we're missing. Because as much as I like Kmet, don't think he's a superstar. I don't think that changes the wide receiver. I think, I feel like we need to focus spreading it out. I want to spread it all out.
So let me give you this. Let's set the salary aside for a minute, and we'll rein it back in. You signed Tanyan. All of the Packers wide receivers are free agents. Which one do you want to plug in here with Tanyan?
Of the Packers wide receivers?
Adams, St. Brown, Taylor, Lazard, and MVS are all free agents.
Well, I'm torn. I kind of like Adams.
Adams getting old.
I know, but plays with heart and who would you pick?
So it would be Adams.
Okay.
But we'll inject reality back into this. We can't afford Adams.
Right. I was gonna say.
We can't afford Adams. You can have St. Brown, MVS for close to the minimum. Lazard is a restricted free agent, so it's a little more complicated. But let's just say out of those three, I kind of like St. Brown. The St. Brown brothers really came on. They had themselves a hell of a year. Valdez-Scantling, I think, fits what they might try to do with Fields here a little bit better. Again, without knowing the head coach.
Right.
But Valdez-Scantling is probably the best route runner of the group. And I think guys that can get themselves open is going to be really important for Fields.
Right.
So that would kind of be mine there. And again, those guys are available. So you can have guys like that on the low end, like you said, maybe stack up a couple of them and see who sticks.
Right.
Because the Bears wide receivers this past year, at best, weren't any better, and at worst were much worse.
Right. I think that's kind of where I'm going at, or coming from, I guess, is that like we have some other things that we really need to focus on, and I don't think I think next year is going to be, I hate to say it, but another rebuilding year for the 100th year in a row. But like, I think we really need to go after as much as we can some of these key positions and put more money at it than just spending a bunch of money or spending more money on things that aren't going to really necessarily matter.
Well, let's transition right to the big one. Offensive line. So let's assume we're taking two rookies ready to start.
Yes.
Because that's the easiest way to think about this.
Right.
The rest of your offensive line is not great out of the guys that are left. You got Tevin Jenkins. You got Whitehair. You've got Borum, Larry Borum still alive. Iselin, Dieter. He's out there. I think that might be all that's returning. Oh, Wheatley. Wheatley's coming back too.
Okay.
So you got two rookies who we're saying will start. And you've got essentially one player at every position. You're losing Ifedi, Peters, Daniels, Wilkinson, Bars, Mustapher, Simmons, and Redmond.
Dang.
All gone. Now, some of those guys were practice squad, up-down kind of guys.
Right.
Ifedi's the right tackle. He's gone. Peters is the left tackle. He's gone. So you really need something. I don't know. I don't know if you pay any of the guys that are leaving because they were so bad.
Right.
Wheatley might make this team and start just because of the position that we're in.
Right.
But this is really probably where you got to spend the cash. Unfortunately, right. There's not a whole lot out there
no
that doesn't have age attached to it. One that really jumps off the page for me is Taran Armstead from New Orleans. He's 30. He's going to cost you $15 million. But you plug him in at left tackle. No, I just looked at his contract. He doesn't cost you 15. I don't think we can afford him. I don't think we can afford him.
Oh, no.
It's probably more like 20. And the cash just isn't there. There's only $43 million open on this team. And we've already spent, let's call it,
which is why I keep
20?
going back to, which is why I keep going back to, I think if we just have to spend as much as we can on offensive line.
So.
And I think you do it, again, as us/polls, hoping, you do it with picking rookie. I know it's crazy, but again, doing most of our draft picks, getting kids that are hungry, people that, I don't know. I don't know how you, I don't know what the right answer is, but we need everyone.
So, is Fields a righty?
And I really don't think you keep anyone. I don't know anyone that that's they were no. Our entire offensive line just as
is
a whole.
Fields right-handed?
Yes.
Okay, so then the left tackle is where you got to spend the cash.
Right. Check that blind side.
Boy. So realistically, at left tackle, there is absolutely nothing available. So let's assume that we addressed left tackle at the draft with some of those linemen we talked about.
Right.
You now need a right tackle, a left guard. If you sign a left tackle and a left guard, you're probably... I don't know if you can play a rookie at that left tackle position. Let's say we do. Let's say we found one. Some of the guys I listed earlier for linemen play on the left side of the line. It's not inconceivable that they could do that. So you need a left guard and a right side player. And your right side player doesn't matter as much because they can flip around a little bit. I'm looking at Laken Tomlinson from the Niners, who you can sign for, call it $7 million. He can play both sides. He has spent at least part of his year. He's spent at least part of his year playing for a quarterback similar to Fields in Trey Lance. So he spent at least some of his time familiar with that. He's old enough where he might have been there for other running quarterbacks whose shall not be named. No, he's not quite old enough. So if you go with young kids, undrafted rookies at the rest of these positions, hold the 5 guys that aren't on expiring contracts. That leaves you with 8 or 9 offensive linemen in camp, which is probably enough to go into camp with.
Right.
If they all work out. You call it a wide open battle. Every single guy has to own his spot. And then in theory, you get the best 5 as starters. With 3 guys, hopefully, who could play multiple positions before you make your last 53-man roster, which is realistically probably going to be 10 linemen with this team. But we freed up a roster spot by not signing a 3rd quarterback.
Right.
Is there anything that stood out to you about the line this year as positive enough to bank on a guy at a position?
I mean, weirdly enough, I think Jenkins probably was one of our best.
When he wasn't fighting dudes or missing blocks, the rest of the time was good.
Such an interesting year we had.
So really...
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm going to go with, if I had to answer a positive, Jenkins was big, he moved a lot of bodies when when we needed him to.
So if you go Whitehair, Jenkins, Wheatley, Easelin, a vet that you sign, 2 rookies ready to start, another couple veterans, minimum vets. Your all-in cost from a salary cap standpoint is, call it $19 million in new investments on the line, about half of what we have to spend.
Right.
Which, from what we've talking about, is probably the right move.
Right.
Because that's where the need is.
Right. Yeah, I don't know any other way but to focus on and put the money in that offense and hopefully have enough players that can stay a few years, have the good, but can stay a few years so that way next year we can see what's broken and fix that rather than just continue to have a few really outstanding players and everyone else just is not really worked out.
So let's shift to the defensive side of the ball and start to explain how we can spend so much on the offensive line. Linebackers pretty much set. Other than Ogletree, don't lose a whole lot. The other piece we don't know yet is what kind of defense this is going to be. So remembering that you got Khalil Mack, who can play outside linebacker, whatever the outside position on a defense is, he can do.
Right.
So whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3, you're losing Ogletree from the linebackers. You're losing Nichols up front. You have pretty much everything else coming back, including big-time guys that missed a lot of time due to injury. For me, on the front 7, you're pretty much set. You don't have to do a whole hell of a lot there. I could see and also make an argument for Nichols. Re-signing Nichols. It's going to cost $9.5 million. It would give a lot of stability to that defensive unit because he's going to play every snap. You don't really have to worry about him.
Right.
But you don't lose a whole hell of a lot. And the depth is pretty good. So I think to make the money for that offensive line overhaul, you got to let a guy like Nichols go. And then expect your young talent to step up. But the front seven's pretty covered from a contract standpoint. There's not a whole lot of guys leaving.
Right.
The secondary, again, in my scenario, we signed 2. In your scenario, we signed 1. Either way, you have a new kid in the secondary. You still got Eddie Jackson back there. Jalen Johnson,
Right.
Duke Shelley, and Vildor are all under contract. This was a unit that was horrifically exposed. There's not a whole lot available in free agency. You could stretch Kevin King from the Packers. You could make work. But I think for the sake of the salary cap flexibility, you've got to bring in undrafted free agents. You just got to bring a whole bunch of kids into camp when the rosters are at 80 and just see which cornerbacks stay. And if you end up having to pass on some of these guys, they got Michael Joseph, Bo Pete Keys, one of the coolest names in football, little Bo Pete. And then Lamar Jackson, the slower Lamar Jackson. They're all on futures deals. They're going to be in camp. So if you bring in 1 or 2 rookies with the guys you have on futures deals and the guys you have staying, you got 7 or 8 defensive backs, which is more than you need unless, COVID wipes out the whole team.
Team again. Well, hopefully by next year that won't be anything.
So, all that to say that if we are convinced the offensive line is where we need to invest, and I think you and I are both on the same page about that, you can let this secondary go a little bit more. But the return has to be that the offense scores.
Right. Well, that's very essentially in my mind, like our defense, though, wasn't anything special this year. Also held their own. We can't expect to win games with 1 touchdown. We can't, no matter how good your defense is, they're never going to not score. It's hardly ever going to not score. So, I think our defense was good enough to hold off that if our offense could actually score, then we are in there to play,
Strangely enough, the last team to look like last year's Bears, Kyle Buller's Ravens. Kyle Buller's my new favorite analogy for Justin Fields. But that defense was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't score at all. They came in second place and missed the playoffs at 9-7 that year. So, but hey, that's Kyle Buller. Yeah. He's not who we're talking about. So, really what we've broken down here is that offensive line and the wide receivers need a lot of work. And thankfully, the GM the Bears just signed is a scouting guy. Can scout college players. He's got a little bit of experience scouting pros. Scouting is going to be everything for this Bears team. They need to get guys in camp. They need to get the right guys in camp. They need to not do dumb shit like have a kicker competition or a punter competition or 4 quarterbacks in camp, because all of those slots need to be these positions we've talked about in getting that competition going. There is room on the salary cap to build a good team here, but it's got to be done correctly. You got to get the vets in on show me deals. I'd be trying to sign every guy coming off an injury, and just, hey, what do you have? What do you got left? Every kid who didn't go drafted because he did something stupid in college or skipped a year for COVID and then got benched. I want all those guys. All the guys that look on paper like they could be something, I want them all in there. There should be a competition at every single spot other than quarterback, running back in the front of the defense. Nobody else has a job. Get them all in there. And so really, I think for the Bears, the next big thing is getting the right coach in place. And
agreed. Yeah.
Go back to the front of the episode for our thoughts on the coaches, but there's a chance. There's a chance. To that note, actually, now that we've talked through the whole roster, a guy like Dan Quinn who has no offensive mind whatsoever, is probably the right guy from a who the hell is playing for this team standpoint. I want to hire Dan Quinn as a consultant for preseason, and then hire an actual coach to coach games. So, Kate, I guess
that's a great idea. Great idea.
You never know. Make them say no. Make them an offer. Like, hey, take another coaching job, but preseason we want you here. We'll give you $5 million. I think I want to end this by doing little picks, doing a projection. What record do you have the Bears team you built, but also the real Bears team for 2022?
We're going 17 games again, right?
I think that's forever now.
That's forever? Okay. Our pick for sure, 17-0. I mean, we're just dominating here.
The team we just built loses to the Packers team with no Aaron Rodgers and no wide receivers.
Our life story. I'm going to, for sure, realistically, I feel like if we can have an offensive line support Justin Fields and a good quarterback, or a good coach, which I feel like is going to be so key here. Someone who can coach a rookie quarterback and make something of Fields, which I think he has in him. I really do. I think we go 9-8 and make the playoffs. Ooh. I'm not mad at it. I'm going. We get one of those.
I am
spots.
with you until the very end. There, I have them 8-9, third place in the division.
Oh, just missing it.
Third.
Oh, Packers and Vikings again?
No, the Vikings and the Lions. I don't think Aaron Rodgers comes back.
Here. Yeah, I don't think so either, which is a great day for everybody.
We're just looking at their wide receivers who are literally all free agents. I don't. It's not going to be good. Now, the Bears probably lose to them twice, but I have the Packers right now, fourth place in the division.
Well, we always lose. You always have to bank on those 2 losses to the friggin' Packers every year. And then we'll beat the Lions, and then we'll lose both times to the Vikings. And
sweep the division champion Detroit Lions. I could see that, actually.
I would love that for them. No, I think I'm telling you, I really believe in Justin Fields, and I know that you don't, but I really think with the right coaching, he could be a really good quarterback. And I think our running backs are there. I think we could score if we have an offensive line, if we they get a good coach in there for Justin Fields. I really think those 2 things will be the difference in a 13 average, points per game and potentially upper 20s points per game. I think we finally get a few touchdowns. And I think with that, we hang in there with the best of them. I really do.
Well, we are 1 year removed from Fields being one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. The talent is absolutely there, and as you said, it's about developing it, and it's about giving him the right tools he needs to succeed.
Do not do well in Chicago. I happen to agree that it is kind of where quarterbacks go to die, which really upsets me, and I want to figure out how to change that. I feel like I
almost wore my my Smokin' Jay jersey today, but I decided that I had to rep the brunch squad instead. So,
I should have done the brunch squad. I didn't even think about it.
I made Kate do this on very late notice.
Nah.
What?
It was perfect.
Well, hey guys, that is our Bears 2022 Armchair GM preview. Varsity Club 602 here, working in tandem with LDG Sports and Entertainment. If you are into kind of this brand of humor and how we do things here, we have a whole bunch of shows on our YouTube channel, Club 602 on YouTube. We do a little bit of everything. Varsity Club is our new label with kind of a catch-all. We do bowl game previews and stuff like this. And I did a draft the other day that got deleted from the internet because I recorded it incorrectly. But hey, we're working on some new stuff. So definitely if you're hearing this, you're probably already following LDG, but go find them on Twitter as well, and come by Club 602 and hear awesome things like Fantasy Bachelor and Bachelorette. So that's the bread and butter. That's where we go. We get literally tens of views on those videos. So, Kate, thank you for joining me to talk about your Bears. And
thank you for having me.
We'll have to get you on for something different, a little bit down the line here.
For sure. I don't watch The Bachelor, but sports. I'm here for sports, all the sports.
Well, hey, for Club 602. Go. Sorry, what was that?
I said,
yeah, sure. God. Maybe we'll bring Kate on for a Bears season preview once this is all settled out.
Perfect. I can't wait.
Well, hey, for LDG Sports and Entertainment and Club 602, Varsity Club 602 on YouTube, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.